I want to ask all of us to work together selflessly for the good of the nation. I am acutely aware that the National Police Service is an independent institution, and so is the judiciary. But ultimately, we have one master, the people of Kenya. And we must make sure that we work together towards serving not interests of individuals, but the collective interest of the people of Kenya. And therefore, I want to ask for more collaboration, more working together, that the independence that we respect and enjoy must also look at how together, interdependently, can work towards achieving the greater interest and the greater good of the people of Kenya. So I really want to ask for a much more harmonious engagement and relationship between our different arms of government and also our different independent institutions, so that we keep focus not on what is good for one sector, but what is good for the greater good of the people of Kenya. Because that way, we will be serving the interest of the Kenyan people. We must, by all means, defend our democracy and the rule of law. We must ensure that we also defend our independent institutions. But we must also ensure that we work together towards the common good of the people of Kenya, and that requires leadership that appreciates that our independence is for purposes of making sure that we serve the people of Kenya. It is not independence for any other purpose. It is for making sure that we draw the lines for us to operationally work towards working for the people of Kenya. And I want to ask for greater understanding, greater accommodation, greater intergovernmental and interagency collaboration for us to achieve what is good for the people of Kenya without necessarily disagreements that can jeopardize the greater good of the people of Kenya. My very clear instructions is, as we digitize government services, we must onboard the digitization of police services, National Youth Service, and also our prison service. The legendary OB must be in digital form so that it is known if a Kenyan has been booked for whatever reason, it must be documented in a manner that cannot be tampered with. And I know there has been a process of digitizing our OB and the whole front, the citizen-facing front of our National Police Service. That is an exercise that I would want to see completed in the shortest time possible so that we can have much more predictability. I would also want to see the payment of fines digitized, instant fines, and all the other things that occur around payments. We must stop the culture of dealing in cash. We've moved away And shortly, we will have a cashless government that does not engage in the business of cash. I know there is a lot of resistance in some quarters, but we will make sure that this whole space has been, we've leveraged on technology to make sure that we can drive the reform and efficiency in this sector to ensure that we have better outcomes in the management of our security. Let me also say that we have concluded the procurement of the first 1,000 e-vehicles that will be used by our police and members of the National Government Administration. It is part of our response to making sure that even as we transport or improve the mobility of our men and women, we are also responding to matters climate change and making sure that we are aligned with the requirements of e-mobility. Already there are houses that are complete. In fact, I was being asked to go and open some for our policemen and our prison service and our National Youth Service. And the Ministry of Housing tell me that in our institutional housing program that we are undertaking under our housing agenda, 32,000 houses are being built for our security services, from the military to the NYS to the National Police Service and to the prison service. And I want to ask the PSS responsible here to make sure that they are in tandem and in line and in collaboration with the Ministry of Housing so that we can provide decent housing for our security men and women. We are aware that in some cases, some of our prison officers live in houses that are not so different from the prison itself. Because if an officer is living in a murder house, you know, the difference between a murder house and a prison is very small. And that cannot be the case. And that is the reason why we extended our housing program to include institutional houses for our military, for our police, for our NYS, and for our prisons. And I want to ask the three services to provide the land, and we are going to work with you. Already, our focus is to build 32,000 units for our security sector. We know that that is not adequate, but it is the first step as we modernize our housing program for our security agencies. And therefore, on matters equipment, we already have rolled out the modernization of our police service. The first phase, we already have equipment that have been purchased for use by our policemen and women, especially in the difficult areas that we have. And that process is ongoing. I committed that we're going to have a 20 billion shilling program to modernize our police. And now we're going to include the other two services as well, the prisons and the NYS, so that we give them the necessary tools for them to discharge their responsibility. I'm very happy that we have started this process. The first deliveries have already been received. And I just want to commit that we are committed to making sure that that process gets to its logical conclusion.
The first one is that the task force, the recommendations are quite expansive, and they are going to cost the government of Kenya quite a bit, especially in these times when our fiscal space is not great. We are grateful so far through your leadership and directives. We have started off on some of even the more difficult issues like welfare issues, but also other issues like modernization of equipment, especially for the police. And we hope that going forward in the coming years, we will also be touching on the other services that are represented. So we are grateful. It's quite an expensive venture, but it is worth it. This country, for it to realize socio-economic development, for this country to move to the next level, we require stability, a secure environment for investors, local and foreign, and a society that is cohesive. For that reason, Your Excellency, we are grateful for the sacrifice you made and the leadership you provided. Security anywhere in the world is a sensitive issue. It's not an easy matter to be able to put together all the competing issues and interests of the country and maintain security. And therefore, this whole of government coordinated approach is the solution and the pathway that will help us realize and balance all the competing interests that we need to balance to ensure that the reforms that we implement are reforms that are people-centered, anchored on our Constitution, and they are reforms that reflect the national interest in its collectivity. And I'm very proud today, Your Excellency, that Kenya, as one of the, if you look at our constitutional architecture for the security sector, as quite a very democratic security sector compared to even some of the older democracies. And I think it's the right thing that we chose under this constitution to have this kind of forward-looking and modern security, people-centered security infrastructure. I want to assure you, under your leadership, from where we sit with my colleagues, both my colleague CS JB Muturi and the other colleagues who are working with us in this enterprise, uniformed and uniformed, we will deliver a people-centered, participatory, open, transparent, and efficient security environment that will help this country realize its socio-economic and cultural objectives as underpinned in our Constitution.